Well, hello there everybody, and welcome to the next episode of the Dwarf tutorial. In the last episode, we talked about the body and soul attributes and all of the jobs that our dwarves can get. In this episode, we're going to be going over the last bit of preliminary information that you're going to need before you get into the game, and that is our items and a little bit of menu stuff. So, when you're at this menu here where you're preparing for your journey, you're going to hit tab and you're going to go over to the item screen. Now, the game gives you a few items by default, even when you play on the Prepare Carefully option, and that is 2 copper pickaxes, some copper battle axes, an anvil, if your civilization can provide one, some alcohol, some seeds, a little bit of food. Badger tripe is just, you know, it's meat, pond turtles, fish, and some plump helmets, which is plants. It also gives you some thread, cloth, bags, ropes, quivers, and buckets, splints, crutches, and a random wheelbarrow. All of these have a specific, candlewood wheelbarrow, pigtail fiber thread. It's whatever your civilization can provide. And you also have a long list of animals that you can bring along. So, let's kind of go over a little bit about each one of these, at least types of items, so that you can understand its significance and its importance to your fort. Now, the first one we have is pickaxes. Now, in the last episode, I told you how important mining is, and pickaxes are literally just as important as that because that's what you use. Literally, you can't get, if you don't have pickaxes, you can't dig into the ground to get metal to make more pickaxes or anything else. So, if you don't have a pick, what are you gonna do? What are you gonna do? And then we get over to the copper battle axes, which I need to make a distinction in that this game does not make the distinction of splitting up the kind of axe that you use to chop down a tree and the kind of axe that you use to chop somebody's leg off. It's the same thing. So a copper battle axe will be used by not only your military people, but by your lumberjacks, and that can, you can have a lumberjack who's in the military, and that would be doubly as good, because that means he'll probably be really good with that fucking axe. And as I said, an axe is, in this case, used to chop down trees, which you use for wood, which you use for beds, which makes your dwarves happy, and then not kill each other. And it's also used to kill goblins who don't kill you, so that your dwarves don't get pissed off and then kill each other, which, is a really vicious cycle. So that's the explanation for those two. You do need pickaxes and you do need battle axes. The 2 copper pickaxes, giving you 2 of both of them is very important because it not only gives you the 2 pickaxes to dig quite quickly with, but it also gives you a battle axe for fighting and a battle axe for lumberjacking, or 2 lumberjacks, whichever you want to go with. But no matter what, you're always going to have one for economic use and one for military use. It also gives you an anvil. Now, this isn't a necessarily guaranteed thing. If your civilization does not have access to metal, like if it's year 1 or something, chances are you might not get an anvil from your civilization, but previous stuff you might. So, it really depends. Now, anvils is kind of a touchy subject because you don't really use them often early on. And as you can see here, in the bottom corner, we do have points. It's the amount of money we can spend. And a lot of people do really honestly suggest that going into this, you don't actually take an anvil, because it is 100 points. There we go. We went from 270 points to 370. Now, this is a personal preference thing, and I honestly say maybe not, because in this game there are merchants, and merchants almost always have anvils, and anvils really aren't that expensive. You'd think they would be, but it's a very basic thing, and most anvils you could, make a bunch of cups out of rocks and then trade it for an anvil, and they'll be just as happy. And there you go, you have an anvil, and you saved a lot of points in the early game. So, the next thing that you have is dwarven ale, wine, and rum. All this falls under the category of alcohol. And alcohol is very, very important. Dwarves are an alcohol-dependent race. I have never seen a creature more dependent on alcohol since I was like 8, so you really, really need this. And having 20 of each gives you a little bit of variety, which keeps the dwarves happy, and really, that's about it. I mean, they can use it to drink if they get thirsty, and they can drink it because they're fucking drunks. Now, alcohol has the side effect of actually increasing your dwarves' productivity. Without it, it actually goes down, so make sure that you do take this alcohol along and you do not remove it. And remember that later on, make sure you keep a pretty good supply of alcohol, and Make sure it doesn't run out, or you're going to have a lot of pissed off dwarves. Now, the next thing that we have to cover are, oopsies, added a little bit more L, are plump helmet spawns, pigtail seeds, cave wheat seeds, sweet pud seeds, rock nuts, devil cup spawns. All of these are types of seeds, or spawn. Spawn is just a fancy word of saying like a fungus seed in that case. And what you do with these is you grow them. These are all underground plants. Dwarves are underground creatures. They grow all of their plants underground, and all these things are grown underground. What these provide you with is, for example, in the case of cave wheat, is cave wheat, which you can grind into flour to make cave wheat bread, which is very important because it's a good food source. And pigtail seeds grow into pigtails, which you can use for a variety of things. As you saw earlier, you had pigtail fiber cloth, and you can grow the pigtail into cloth. And the plump helmet spawns, plump helmets can be grown into both food, and that food, which are the plump helmets, can be converted into alcohol. All of these are very important, and honestly, I would suggest if you have any points left over at the end of this, yeah, add some more points to seeds, because seeds are important, and you can honestly find yourself running out at times, and it is bad. It is really bad. Alright, and then the next thing we have is banter tripe, pond turtles, and plump helmets. As I said earlier, we do have plump helmet seeds. Now, all these are types of food. The tripe is a type of meat product. It comes from the badger in this case. Pond turtles is a fish product, and plump helmets are a plant product. These are the three major food groups for dwarves. Now, variety is the spice of life, and dwarves will get pissed if they're eating the same thing, ergo the variety. Now, all this is important because without this, your dwarves are both going to starve and be really, really fucking pissed. And I don't know which is worse because, I mean, one leads to the other, and a dead dwarf can't be unhappy, so it's really however you want to take it. Now, the next thing that we have are pigtail fiber cloth, thread, bags, and rope. All of these are very, very expensive and are made out of things, as you read above, you can grow. Now, thread, cloth, bags, and rope. Rope is made for some products that you would make, like maybe mine carts, for example. Bags are used for storage. Cloth is used for clothes and repair of clothes therein. And thread is used for not only repairing clothes, but also by your doctors for suturing up patients. It's basically their replacement for stitches. Now, all these are very important, but they are also very expensive, so if you do want to save points at this stage, it is a good idea to maybe remove a few of these. Now, the next thing that we have are quivers and buckets, splints, crutches, and wheelbarrows. Let me get quivers out of the way. Quivers hold arrows and slingshot balls, if you have them, and crossbow bolts, and ammo, and God forbid you use ammo. Dwarves don't use bows. Actually, dwarves do use bows, and it's very important to have these. Dwarves that you do set up as military dwarves, and who you do want to use bows, will need quivers to carry around their arrows. Otherwise, they're going to have a bow in one hand and arrows in the other, and then no free hand to pull back the bow. So they're going to be beating people with a bow while they stab people with arrows. So it's not really a good idea. But this is another thing that is, it's not incredibly expensive, but it's not really that useful here in the early game. It is good if you don't want to make them later on, but honestly, there's really no point in having them this early if you don't plan to make a military really early, and you just kind of plan to maybe just wall yourself off and make sure you're just safe deep and down in your fort. Now, if you're going to do that, you really don't need these, but if you want to be more aggressive, these are very useful. Now, the next things that I said we had are the buckets, splints, crutches, and the wheelbarrow. Now, all these are actually incredibly expensive considering what they're made out of, and candle nut is a type of wood. All this is made out of wood, and we have 2 battle axes. If you get a lumberjack, all you need to do is cut down 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 5, 6, 7. Wait a minute. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and then 10 logs, and then there you go. You take your lumberjack with 10 logs, give it to the carpenter, and then there you go. You've made all the buckets, splints, crutches, and wheelbarrows that it wanted to give you. This is something that I would suggest that no matter what you do, get rid of these. You can go from 370 points to just getting rid of these to 510. That is stuff that is incredibly easy to make, and because where you have a very long save period when you first go into a fort, especially in a safe area like what we're going to be doing, you have a lot of time to just be like, well, you know what, I'm just going to cut down a few trees and make what I need. And then there you go. You made what you need, and you didn't need to get all these points. And then you can spend it on other stuff, like chickens. And guess what chickens are good for? Eggs. And fertilizing eggs to make more chickens, which you can slaughter for meat. Because you don't want to slaughter your first chickens, because then you won't have anything to make eggs, and then you'll run out of chickens. That's a big issue. So, let's start talking about the animals. Now, with animals, you need a male and a female, and the tags for it are very small. You'll be able to see it better on your end than you will be able to in my game. You can get yak, bulls, and calf. Those are just yaks. The bull and the cow are the adults. The calves are obviously the babier versions. You can get buck rabbits, does, bunnies, dogs, which are very, very important, and cats, which are just as important as mining. Mining is tier 0, the top tier. It is above tier 1, and pickaxes and cats are on the top of that list. Now, cats, the reason they're up there is because they do 3 incredibly important things in your fort. The first one is they make dwarves happy. And you really don't want to underestimate how important that is. I've had dwarves. Okay, example, I had a dwarf one time, he had a pet kitten. It was the only thing he had. He had no wife, he had no kids, he had no friends. He was just, you know, doing what he wanted. And he was in a cavern, and, you know, he was chopping down some trees and just, you know, having a good time with his little pet cat and kitten, excuse me. And up comes a giant crocodile out of the water, and this dwarf didn't see it. And then he got stuck in a spider web, and he got all pissed. And then he turned around and he saw this giant cave crocodile, which, mind you, if you've ever seen any sort of dinosaur documentary, it's pretty much one of those fucking, like, crocodile dinosaurs. I forgot the name. Too complicated. Anyway, cave crocodile bites down on that poor little kitten, does a barrel roll, spits it out, doesn't even eat it, and it starts looking around. It completely ignores the dwarf. Now, this dwarf, in its pure sheer rage at the loss of its only known loved one, broke out of the spider web, grabbed the crocodile by the bottom of its mouth and the top of its mouth, and ripped it in half down its center. It literally had the top half of the crocodile and the bottom half of the crocodile in its fucking hands. And that is the kind of attachment that your dwarves will get to cats. Now, this can be used to your benefit. For example, if you know you have a bunch of military dwarves and they all like cats, and you throw all the cats at, you know, some enemies, and the enemies kill the cats, your dwarves are going to be really fucking pissed. And that's sometimes a good thing. So, kittens are good for the dwarves' mental stability. That's the first one. The second one is that they kill vermin. And that's really, really important, because the vermin will not only rot and eat your food, but they'll piss off your dwarves. And if you haven't learned by now, a pissed off dwarf, in most cases, is a bad dwarf who is probably going to kill his mother, and then his father is going to kill him, and then you've got a tantrum spiral on your hands. Damn, that's some good water. And then the third option you have with cats is they're a pretty good source of food. I mean, they lay a lot of babies, and you know, you can very quickly get a lot of cats. You know, just throw them in a pit, let them have sex, you know, throw in a few breadcrumbs every now and then, and in about a few months you'll have a couple hundred cats, and you just take them off to the slaughterhouse. You get cat hide, cat bones, cat meat, cat kidneys, all of that's really good and really tasty. Cats are the top tier animal in this game, not only because they're cheap and they reproduce fast, but they are very good for your dwarves, and that's why they're important. Dogs, on the other hand, while they do help with a dwarf's mental self-esteem, they are a little bit more expensive, and they often die much quicker, because whereas a cat will run away from an enemy, a dog will try to bite it every time. So, I would always suggest bringing along at least two of each gendered cat, just so that you know you'll have that surviving with you. And you use the plus and minus key if you hadn't figured that out by now. And then for the other animals you have donkeys and horses and cows and bulls. And any of these animals that you would imagine that you could do something with, like milking it or shearing it, you can. So for example, like, where is it? Well, somewhere, like a ram or a sheep or something like that. You can shear it for wool, and then there you go. For the cows, the female cows specifically, and all the female cow-like animals, you can milk it. You can make that into cheese, and that's a good food source. And for the sheep and the, whatever else that may grow any kind of fur or wool, you can shear that and make wool coats or whatever the hell you really want. Then you got pigs, which are a really good source of food. And then you have stuff like water buffaloes. Now, a good reminder for this is a lot of animals like cows and buffaloes and stuff like that you would imagine that would need to be out in the field to eat grass. They do, actually. They really do. If you don't let them eat grass or eat something, they will starve to death and die. And then that's the end of that. So if you do plan on settling in somewhere that doesn't have grass, maybe bringing along an animal that needs to eat grass is not the best idea. Now, not all animals need to graze, like ducks and drakes and stuff like that. No, they don't need to eat. They don't need to eat grass. They don't even need water. They just need to be there. Mind you, that's a little bit of a misnomer in Dwarf Fortress, but still. And then you have stuff like the goose, ganders, and ducks and all that. Now they lay eggs. That's very good. That's fine. You need to have, a little nest for that. And then you have stuff like guinea cocks, blue peahens, stuff like that. All very simple animals and all very easy to understand. Cats being the most important. So, with all this aside, in the next episode of Dwarf Fortress that's going to come out tomorrow, we will be talking about putting all of the knowledge that we have together, putting skills into our dwarves, finding a good area to live in, and then setting up items and all of this. Now that you know the basics of what all this does, you can kind of give it a good idea of what to do yourself, but I'll be showing you step by step how to do each one now that we know what everything's about. So, hope everybody has enjoyed this episode, and I will see you guys next time.